So for some weird reason you would think that Mag 10 is a good gun to learn how to play with. I mean, if we don't take money into the account, it's literally disgusting. But for the price of only $10.50, you know, it's not so bad anymore. In fact, it has the highest damage per second compared to all other SMGs. By the way, it's also the best value SMG. So if you multiply damage per second by armor penetration and divide it by price, Mag 10 comes at the very top. By the way, if you wonder what's the worst SMG is, it's P90. And it's not because of damage per second or armor penetration, it's because of its high cost. Not gonna lie, I don't use Mag 10 too often, usually I would just go for UMP, but I decided to give it a shot. So let's take a look. So obviously the first thing I did was jump into a deathmatch. It's always interesting to see how the gun stands on its own, you know, without any utilities or game strats. And I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I had a lot more success with a sawed-off than I had with a Mag 10, which sounds ridiculous. Because in a deathmatch all enemies are obviously armored, the damage was incredibly low. So I'm gonna pull up a little table here and you can see that the damage to the head is only 65, the chest and arm is 16, stomach is 20 and leg is 21. So if you're not very close to the enemy, it's gonna be really hard to dink them, so let's just assume you're not gonna land any headshots. In this case you need 5 shots at least to kill the enemy. So let's be honest, unless you sneak up on them, it's gonna be very hard to do. And unfortunately it doesn't seem like Mag 10 has the same running and jumping accuracy as MP9, so it was even more difficult. And while you're facing a scout on a different side of the map, it's impossible to beat them. Like, there is literally no chance, unless all 5 of you in a competitive game would rush. And in this case you'll probably suffer great losses. So anyways, I have one more little rant here, and it's the fact that the magazine size is 30, which is amazing, but because of such a high fire rate, you essentially have to reload every time you get someone. And you may say, hey, just land 2 headshots, like, are you a noob or something? No, that's not the case, but, you know, in a lot of cases it's impossible to land a headshot when they're shooting their rifle at you, or when they're literally 20 meters or more away from you. Because the rifles have longer barrels, I assume, their accuracy over the distance is a lot better than you would imagine a Mag 10, or any other SMG in fact. So let's conclude this saying that deathmatch experience was not satisfying at all. It was a lot more fun to play with the sawed-off, I'm not gonna lie. But did I learn something? Absolutely. I realized that if the enemy is armored, you probably don't wanna use Mag 10. You probably wanna go and spend that extra $200 on a UMP. But hey, I'm not gonna leave you hanging saying it doesn't work. No, I decided to give it a shot in Wingman as well. So let's take a look.
What's good, bitch?
Now for Wingman we have started on the CT side and won 6 games out of 8, so I didn't have too much time playing as a T. However, I still tried using an SMG as opposed to, you know, a rifle to make it a little more fair. And MP9 is a similar starting rifle as Mag 10 on a different side, so I thought, hey, might as well play with that for a bit. And obviously I have played with a Mag 10 as well. Anyways, let me just tell you what I have observed on a smaller map where most fights happen in like close quarters, especially because I was rushing the Short Dust Palace every time. As you remember, I told you that in close range, Mag 10 is best value. And it was a pretty good value, yes, I'm not gonna lie. And it did kinda work out in terms of my teammate had longer range weapons and he was on the outside of the palace. I would usually rush the place and just wait for them to come closer to me. In a real comp game it would be a lot harder, but just because it's a Wingman, it kinda worked out. Plus, I actually started using the utilities, nades, smokes, mollies. Plus, I guess we had some sort of a game strat, like he would just say, hey, you go rush and I'll go outside. So, I guess that's sort of a game strat. Anyways, to summarize it, the experience was very different from Deathmatch and I didn't feel as weak and powerless. The main reason to that would probably be the fact that they didn't have enough money to buy better rifles, so we're kind of on the same level. If they were to get M4s or AUGs, it would be much harder for me to get them, even if we are in close quarters. And once again, once they were able to afford the armor, it was close to impossible to just get them with body shots. So a lot of the time they would just rush me and I wouldn't be able to do anything. Even if I dink them and land a couple shots, they would still have a chance to get me. Overall, I would say for the price, it's probably one of the best SMGs you can get. the best one being UMP. And once again, if you're playing Wingman and you're in the middle of the game where both teams have money, you can get away with a MAC-10. When you're playing comp, however, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult, especially when you're on the T side and the enemy is holding corners. You know, with a FAMAS, or an M4, or a NOG, or an OP, or a Scout, or a Shotgun, it's just gonna be difficult overall, especially if you're the only one rushing. If there are 5 of you, you have a much higher chance, but it may still be a little bit dangerous. So now let's see how the casual went, where enemies have rifles and armor and nades and everything. And the maps are a lot larger, with a lot of people holding corners. So casual went pretty pathetically as well, I'm not gonna lie. At one point we had around about 7 uppers on our side and probably the same number on the other side, if not more. So I feel like using a MAC-10 in that specific scenario was rather dumb. Even though I had all the nades and everything available to me, it was almost impossible to break through so many people holding so many angles and get close to them. And they weren't just holding them with SMGs, no, they were holding them with rifles and ops, mostly ops. And while you can get away with one person holding an angle, when there are 2 or 3 holding one single angle, there is literally no chance you can do anything, you know what I mean? So at that point, it didn't even matter if I was pushing cat or A-long or tunnels, every single angle has been held by like 2 people. And it was so painful. We did manage to win the game, but obviously not because of me. Because of the 8 uppers we had on our team probably. So long story short, unless we're all pushing, there is no point in getting an SMG when your enemy has much better guns. Overall, if you were to play comp, your best bet would probably be using MAC-10 during an eco round, so the second round. And after that, if you're ever low on money and nobody in your team can afford a decent rifle, honestly, sometimes it's better to save than just to all splurge in on a MAC-10 and then still lose the game. So I guess your decision will really vary on case-to-case basis. If you cannot afford to save another round, just go for an SMG and, you know what I mean, get some flashes and give it your best shot. In this case you'll only be down 1300 after a MAC-10 and a flash, and overall it's not too bad. And if you have 2000, you can also buy body armor. With that money you can't even afford a rifle, except for a Galil. So perhaps in that specific case that would work, especially if the entire team gets that and you all push the same side, there is a very high chance you can actually secure it. So now let's jump into the workshop map and just take a look, just so you can kind of get an idea of how close you have to be to the enemy to land a headshot and what the accuracy over distance is and how much it deteriorates the further you are as opposed to a rifle, and a couple little things like that, so something you just keep in the back of your head. So this is gonna be a quick one. Essentially what I want to say is MAC-10 is alright, and you can clearly see that it's just around about alright. Perhaps what it excels at is running accuracy, but everything else is unfortunately on the lower side as opposed to a rifle. And I still can't get over the fact how low the armor penetration is for MAC-10. I knew it wasn't the best, obviously, but I didn't realize just how bad it was until I kinda looked at the numbers and have tested it over and over again, as opposed to just in one round in comp. You know, when you're all rushing banana on Inferno, you kind of don't really notice how many shots it really takes you to get someone out, because there are 4 guys behind you, for example, right? And there are a couple enemies. And in the moment you don't really realize what's going on. And to be frank, I don't really use it in any other round. MAC-10 just seems like a must for the second round. And obviously you're not gonna try to snipe your enemy with a MAC-10 on a T-ramp when they're standing by the boiler. Most of the time in such rounds it's gonna be that close range engagement, which is why I never realized that MAC-10 could be pretty weak at times. I always felt like its magazine wasn't big enough, or its fire rate was too high, so you had to reload a lot, but that was about it. Now the damage drop off with the distance is actually insane. Plus the accuracy is dropping too, and the combination is just really bad. So if you know that enemies are gonna be holding those long angles, you may just have to, once again Inferno example, have to go through the apartments and just try to get them one by one or something, right? Once again, if 5 of you are rushing banana with Mac 10 and the enemy just happened to throw the nade or a molly and you don't have a smoke handy, you'll just burn off half of your HP and it greatly lowers your chance of winning the game. Long story short, I'm not saying you shouldn't use a Mac 10, in fact I think you should, considering the price. It's literally the cheapest gun besides pistols in CSGO, so might as well use it at its full advantage. There is a reason why it's so cheap as well, so keep that in mind. If it was as powerful as a Galil or even a P90, it wouldn't be this cheap, because that would be incredibly unbalanced. So there is always this trade-off between money and power, and if it's a critical round and you can't afford to save anymore, it's a lot better to buy a Mac 10 as opposed to a Deagle. Don't get me wrong, Deagle is the best gun in the game, obviously, but sometimes you just need that fire rate, you know what I mean? So yeah, choose wisely. And remember that there is always trade-off between the price of a gun and how much punch can it pack. After killing 2 enemies with Mac 10, you essentially made your money back and more. So it's not that bad, if you know what I mean. It takes a lot more kills to make AK or M4 pay for itself. Alright, and that's about it, so let's just move to conclusion. Okay guys, so I hope I kind of gave you a little more insight on Mac 10 and how to use it. Do your best to always use it in close range and only buy it when necessary. It's a lot harder to learn to play with rifles, but at the end of the day, it's gonna pay off greatly. If at this very moment you're more comfortable just playing with SMGs, go right ahead, you know what I mean? But I suggest in this case trying to play with the UMP a little more. With running accuracy and amazing armor penetration, it's honestly close to a rifle. Yeah, so if you enjoyed the video, give us a like. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to the channel, it would help us a lot. Thank you very much, and remember guys to always follow your instinct. Till the next time.